Welcome to the Jon Top of It show.
Podcast.
Or podcast.
Or
sure.
show.
Sure.
Now that we're on video.
My guest today, again, is Nicole Meisburg, and she has a little surprise.
I'm preggers.
Yeah, she's going to have a child, and it's...
Your child.
It's my child. That's right. So I thought it would be fun and also interesting for our viewers and listeners at home to hear us talk about some controversial pregnancy and baby issues and see what each other thinks and start a conversation with you all out there on social media. So let's just dive right into it. Number one, giving birth. Should it be done in a hospital or should it be done at your house?
I mean, I want to be in a hospital just because who knows what's going to go down. And I want doctors there who know what they're doing to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds safer.
I would feel uncomfortable. Just, okay, let's try this on our own. Yeah, I'd much rather have someone who, has seen this before, done this before.
Devil's advocate, though, it's been done outside of a hospital for how long?
Sure.
But a lot of those babies probably died.
Some of them. Well, what people will do now, if it's at home, they get a midwife.
Uh-huh.
So someone who's actually done it before can help you through the process.
So I wrote down pros and cons, and I saw it's under the having a baby at home with a midwife. The pros are that it's more comfortable usually for the woman giving pregnancy because she can be at in the comfort of her house instead of a cold hospital.
Comfortable in the fact that she's in her home.
Yes.
But does she have meds?
Oh, right. So it's more like it's one type of comfort.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. What happens if the mother needs an emergency C-section?
Yeah.
You can't get that done at your house yet, I guess.
Yeah.
Or what happens if the umbilical cord gets wrapped around the neck of the baby? And also, the life of the mother could be at risk if there's a complication. So it's not just the baby. And like you said earlier, the mother might be comfortable. The mother might be comfortable in her own house, but does she have an epidural?
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing if people want to have a baby at their house, they're leaning towards the more natural way, so they wouldn't have meds. Which many people opt out of that. I mean,
so what do you
they want to experience the full feeling of what it feels to give birth.
The natural way without medical intervention.
Yes.
Just to know.
Yes. Because some people claim they can feel the contractions, and it's kind of numbed when you get an epidural.
I think a lot of women probably start off thinking that way. And then when the pain hits them, they're like, give me that epidural.
Yeah, but you can only give it up to a certain point. So if they wait too long,
it's
you can't
too
get
late.
it. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's why.
God.
Decide.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read several stories about women who backed out last minute and they were like, I need the epidural. Here's a statistic. The death rate for midwife-attended home births was 13 fatalities for every 10,000 deliveries. For every 10,000 deliveries. This is compared to 6 deaths per 10,000 hospital deliveries by a doctor. So based on this statistic, a Reuters article quotes some study. It says that home birth is approximately twice as dangerous. It's one way to interpret that. But, I mean, even in the hospital, 6 out of every 10,000 pass away. And in a home birth, it's 13 out of 10,000. So I guess maybe another way to look at this, though, is that a home birth isn't really as dangerous as we think it might be. It's only 7 more. I mean, every child's life matters, but it's only 7 more lives 6 versus 13 per
out of
per
10,000 though. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess maybe some women are like, I like those odds. I feel comfortable. I don't know. Or
some
maybe
women it's worth it.
Or maybe they're just ignorance is bliss. The less they know about it, the better. They just want to do it natural.
Yeah.
Well, another factor to consider though is how expensive it is to go to the hospital, especially
That's true.
what happens if you don't have health insurance.
Yeah, and that can be another reason why people choose home birth, because they don't have to deal with all the hospital bills.
I mean, my understanding of the cost involved is that it's around $20,000 to $30,000 depending, and that's if nothing goes wrong. And if your health insurance covers it, it brings it down to anywhere between 3 to 7 maybe. So what happens if you don't have health insurance? And
I know.
What do those women do?
Well, they either pay it or they choose another option.
Do they have like special prices for? I don't know. But it's just there's got to be more to that, because I feel like there's a stereotype that families that are poor tend to have the most children. So how are they affording it?
They probably choose home birth.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next topic. Baby names. Should you go with a traditional name or a non-traditional name?
Okay, so what is qualified as traditional, non-traditional? Do you mean like non-traditional, it's like my name is Apple?
No, I think a traditional name is a name that when you say it to somebody else, they know somebody else with that name. I think that's a traditional name. And I think on average, the average person knows somebody else with that name. And I think a non-traditional name falls outside of that, where like you hear it, you're like, oh.
So like a common name versus not common.
I think so. I think isn't that what traditional means? Yes.
Okay.
So what do you think? What are the pros and cons to traditional versus non-traditional? And what do you prefer?
I prefer non-traditional.
Oh, okay. And why is that?
Because it stands out and it's more unique.
Sure.
Or if it was a traditional name, one that was like not as common.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. I feel like the very common names kind of get lost because there's so many people with that name.
Like I'm John, and everyone's name is John, and I've always kind of hated that. But there's probably pros to it that I've ignored. Like I just don't like take it. I don't appreciate the pros of having a common name.
Like I guess the plus side, everyone knows how to pronounce it because they've heard it before.
Also, if other people know people with that name, maybe it affects the way that they treat you. Like, oh, I knew another John. He was really nice, or he was really respectful. So maybe I see you. It's not even a fair thing to do, but maybe then they see you as nice and respectful just because they knew another John that was like that.
But that could also be on the flip side.
Yes.
If someone saw you as
Karen. Karen is the meme on the internet as the like a rude, angry mom type of character that complains in a store it says, let me see the manager. That's a Karen. Or like if you're a Chad, you're like a jock type guy.
Yeah, so common names can be
detrimental,
associated to a lot of other people that might have that name, and you might have like beef with the person who has that name.
That's true.
You might really like that name. So once you introduce yourself, let's say to someone new, they automatically have this like idea of who you're going to be because maybe they knew someone who had that name.
Yeah. Or if you have like a porn star name like Mercedes or I don't know, Sparkles, then they assume you're a stripper or something.
Yeah, I think the name, you have to think a lot about a name before you just name a kid because of what it's associated with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I want to call, or like what nicknames come out of this name?
Mm-hmm. That's true. So you want to hear what I researched on this?
Okay.
Let's see. Research suggests that giving your baby a non-traditional name can seal its fate from the get-go, limiting future employment and social prospects. Names that sound like they've come from a family with a low socioeconomic status can lead others to draw negative or unflattering conclusions about them. Like we were just saying. Like if you named your baby Bertha, I don't know. Or no. Well, I don't know. What is an example of a name that sounds like you came from a family of low socioeconomic status? Maybe Bubba or something. You sound like you came from a redneck.
Country hick, yeah.
I kind of get it. There's a correlation between popular first names and lower rates of juvenile criminal behavior. Names carry a lot of information that the brain quickly assesses. A name activates a rich set of semantic information, from connotations of the bearer's age to an intellectual competence, race, ethnicity, social class, which impacts impression, formation, and evaluation.
I have a question about that.
What?
So it says people with common names are more likely to not have committed crimes, more likely to get a job, right?
Popular first
names.
Yeah.
Well, aren't there more names in general for them to pull their data from? Like, since they're popular anyway.
That's true. I don't know if you can use that.
Yeah.
You can poke holes in that argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see.
Because there's uncommon ones. So, of course, they're not going to be a wide range of the uncommon name.
Yeah.
You just have a few select.
Yeah. Okay. Listen to this one. Employers have reported that they tend to overlook applications with people with bogan-esque names. Apparently, bogan is it means uncouth or an unsophisticated person or someone being regarded as low social status. So apparently, employers report that they tend to they have a bias towards overlooking applications that have a strange name or a non-traditional name. They say they can't help it but judge someone based on their name. They will overlook a CV with a bogan name on it. It sounds terrible, and it seems that's just the way of the world. Researchers found people with names that were easier to pronounce and spell often had better jobs. When we process information more easily, the names are easier to comprehend, and we come to like it more. So I guess if you have... Maybe that also explains why there's a lot of frustration around people who name their child like Caitlin with 3 Y's and 2 I and
yeah, how it's spelled.
Yeah, so
there's so many different spellings.
So someone says, "Hey, my name's Caitlin," and you're like, "Oh, how do you spell that?" And then someone tries to spell it and they butcher it, and then they tell them how they actually spell it, and then they're like, the person who spelled it wrong is like, I don't feel like this is my fault that I spelled it wrong. Like, you should not have spelled your name that way.
Same with like Haley or
Katie. How do you spell Haley in a difficult way? I thought it's Hailey or Haley.
Well, then I know my friend Haley is Hayley.
Ugh. And you're Nicole. Is there a way to spell Nicole?
Ew, yes.
How do you do it?
The right way is Nicole. Don't stick an H in there, so there's hole. Who says Nick Hole? That's gross. Pull that H out. I hate that. It's such a pet peeve.
Yeah.
Like sometimes at Starbucks, I'll order a drink, and when I see that person write an H, I'm like, are you serious? Go to a different Starbucks.
Sounds like you don't want to add characters to a name that don't need to be in there. Like if you can spell it in a more simple way for other people to spell it, then it gives the child an advantage in life.
Most simplest way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't add these extra letters to be different.
Hide like a silent Q in there. All right, let's see what else. This is more statistics on naming your child. People that tend to see their kids as possessions tend to want to name their child in a really different way. If you see your child as a property, but I don't feel like you do, and you want to name your child something different. I don't feel like you would. In
general, I like things that are unique.
I do too, and so I started off personally wanting to be like, I want a really unique name. But the more you read about how non-traditional names can negatively impact a child growing up, you start to feel a little hesitant. But I think this also touches on a broader subject, which is also letting your child be unique and go against the grain and do whatever they want within reason, so they don't have to grow up like a cookie cutter human being.
Exactly. Just like I don't like cookie cutter houses.
Yeah.
I want a house with character that has little unique things about it.
Yeah.
I think that's why you compromise. You don't pick the most common name, but you don't pick something so obscure and out there. You pick something kind of in between where it's like, oh, I haven't really heard that name a lot, but it's still like not as common as like Jessica, Caitlin,
I'm going to keep going.
Sure.
In many cases, the name reflects the mom or dad's own value and backgrounds. Naming was in many cases a proxy for the parent's philosophy on life in general. The parent who says, I want my kid to be unique and stand out, will probably have a parenting style that emphasizes uniqueness and standing out.
Yeah.
So definitely. It ends up building on itself.
Uh-huh.
Research has indicated that common names were seen as the least unique but the best liked, and that people with them were the most likely to be hired in job vacancy scenarios, and that the name of an individual has a significant impact on how he or she is viewed or conceived, whether or not the individual is hired for a job. So a lot of these were employment related.
Again,
I read all of this and then I wrote at the bottom, I don't know, I still like a unique name.
Yeah. But again, like how can they possibly pull it? Oh, this is more, unless I guess they had an even ratio of unique versus traditional names.
I think,
and then found that more traditional.
It'd be interesting to research it and to see like what are the parameters around the studies. Anyway, I feel like we didn't really make any progress with that topic. Like, I guess what we're saying is we would like a non-traditional name,
but not like completely
alien.
Yeah.
So like a name that somebody else has out there already.
But maybe there's like only a handful.
But it's less common than John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, new topic. Circumcision. Pro or against?
I mean, before they said the reason why hospitals were doing it because they said it was cleaner.
Yeah, I think that's BS. You know what I actually think about this? They say that men should not be allowed to have an opinion on what a woman does with her body when it comes to like abortion. I feel like you can use that same argument for women shouldn't be allowed to have an opinion or a say in whether or not men should have their penis snipped. It's like, it's our body. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that like,
I mean, but men still do have opinions on abortion.
That's true, and I feel like they should not be allowed to. I mean, you can have an opinion, but you shouldn't be allowed to have a deciding say.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Like when you have 20 guys in the government all getting together and saying women aren't allowed to do X, I think it's crazy. It should be 20 women, and even so, I don't think the government should have a say. But anyway, I don't think this is the right way to go down this conversational path, because ultimately the way I feel about circumcision is that it's not my choice. It's not about are you a man and it's affecting another man. It's I should only be able to decide if I should have a circumcision, but I should never be allowed to decide for another life if they should have a circumcision. It's their body.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they should have autonomy to whether or not they want to physically alter their body.
I don't think it's standard now anymore, as standard.
It's becoming less and less of a standard. So I have a statistic on that. In the 1960s, it was nearly 90%. 9 out of 10. Now it's only 33%. So you're right. It's gone from 90% to only a third. So the arguments that I've heard in favor of circumcision is that it's more it looks better aesthetically, but I think that's like a brainwash thing. Like, I think my child's penis is more aesthetically pleasing to other people because other people's penises have been mutilated, and I want that child's penis to match their mutilation. I don't know. That's kind of a strange thing to.
It's an aesthetic. I mean, it's like plastic surgery.
But I mean, the aesthetic is based on brainwash, like
society.
It's like, yeah, like if everyone chopped the tip of their nose off and you just had a square here instead of a round little bump, and you're like, I want my child to have a square nose because everyone else has square nose. It's like, it's total, like, it's based on what? I don't know. It seems like a weak argument for.
It's like pierced ears in babies.
I think that's wrong too.
I don't think, they're too young to even decide if they want pierced.
It should be their decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same argument. Except for this is worse.
Yeah, that's worse than
this is worse, and I'm going to get into why, but I'm trying to address the supposed pros of getting circumcision before I go through the list of cons. So, like, aesthetics, but I think that's brainwash. And if you go outside of America, I was reading that most people are uncircumcised. So if you are circumcised, they probably would look at your junk and be like, that looks weird. That's something to think about. So it's more US centric to be circumcised, but outside of the world, that's not the case. Another popular argument for circumcision that I've read is that it's more hygienic, like you said. But according to the reports that I've read of people who are uncircumcised that talk about it online, they say, I just have to wash under it. It's not a big deal. Like you just wash under it.
Right.
Like, are you going to start chopping things off your body because you have to wash under it? Like, that's like some people who are overweight, they have a breast, and then are you going to chop off your breast so you can wash under your breast? Like, like, it's a strange thing.
I'm not going to chop off mine.
Thank God. But you know what I mean? Like, that's this weird thing to do. Like, I'm going to chop a part of my body off because it's like a tiny bit more inconvenient to wash under there. Like, you just wash it.
Well, they're worried about, like, UTIs.
So there's a statistic that said that there's a decreased risk of UTI infection during the first year of a baby's life. And you know whose fault that is? The parents.
Yeah, for not cleaning.
For not washing it. So that, I guess the hospitals, they're creating a fail-safe mechanism. They're like, okay, well, maybe on average parents, they don't clean this child's uncircumcised penis, so we're just gonna chop off that tip so that they don't have to worry about it. That's a terrible reason. Like, just wash it, whatever. So here are all the cons. I don't know how many you might know some of these already, but. And I knew most of them, but there are a few that I didn't know. The first con is, a lot of people argue, like I said, that a permanent body modification by a person that's not old enough to have a say in the matter should be illegal. Like, so it's about the right to bodily autonomy. We would never impose cosmetic surgery on an infant. You would never give a baby a nose job or breast.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's their choice. Another thing is it severely reduces sensitivity for sexual activity for that child when they become an adult. And that's something that I'm circumcised, and that's something that actually really bums me out. That I will never get to know what that's like. And I think a lot of people who are circumcised, they're like, it's not a big deal, whatever, I still enjoy sex. And maybe all those things are true. But, like, in the back of your mind, you have to wonder, like, what am I missing out on that I was supposed to have, that God gave me? Like, why do I have to live without it? That's weird. So there are tens of thousands of nerve endings there. That's an astounding amount of sensory bandwidth Those nerve endings include a whole lot of sensitive stretch receptors. And as the foreskin moves, it reports a whole lot of positional detail, and that there's a whole extra kind of sensation we're talking about. It's a frictionless gliding mechanism. And the foreskin, it's not just a piece of skin. It's a toroidal linear bearing that provides completely frictionless movement, far superior to any amount of lubrication. So it's a natural form of lubrication for the penis to move, number one. And there's tens of thousands of nerve endings there that were meant to be there to feel, sexual pleasure. You're getting rid of your body's natural way to lubricate. You're getting rid of your body's, pleasure sensors. I just think that's terrible. And then you hear all the time about guys who complain about not wanting to wear condoms because they don't feel anything. It's probably because they've also been circumcised and they've cut off most of their nerves down there. I just think that's tragic that so many people have had that happen to them.
Yeah.
And then you hear about it happening to girls in other countries where they cut off their clit as because they don't want them to feel pleasure. And it's like everyone sees that's like undeniably abuse to most.
They do that
women.
to babies?
I think so. It's not done in first world countries. I think it's done in like more barbaric places.
Sad.
But everyone sees that as abuse.
Yeah.
But how is that dissimilar?
Yeah.
Another point is that it's painful for the baby to perform a circumcision. In infancy, the foreskin is fused to the glands like your nails are fused to the nail bed, and it needs to be forcibly stripped free. So when you do this to a baby, you're inducing a very traumatic experience for them. Like imagine ripping your nail off your hand. That would hurt. Infants cannot be given sufficient pain relief either during the operation or during the healing process. Like there's no epidural for the baby. There's no.
Yeah, it's sad.
There's research to indicate that this trauma that they experience from circumcision causes permanent effects on their neural development, including permanently lowering their pain tolerance.
Wow.
It's also relatively dangerous in the sense that it's been reported that over 100 infants die of circumcision in the U.S. every year. I had a nephew of mine that had a circumcision. I remember hearing something about that they botched it or it went wrong and he bled a lot.
Oh my gosh.
It just seems like if it's unnecessary, all because the parents don't want to wash under it, and because some people in America think it looks weird, some of these traditions are just strange.
Yeah.
I just think we should question them.
Mm-hmm. I know, it's sad.
What really got me was the whole ripping your nail off. Like even when I cut my nails a little bit too short, and you get that pain when you went too low, it's like that, but ripping the whole.
Well, and the fact that's horrible. It sounds like it lowers your tolerance for pain permanently.
Well, then
because you experience so much pain as a kid.
I wonder if it affects your ability to trust human beings too. Like the first thing you experience when you come out of the womb is somebody hurts you. Like that's gotta affect how you see the people that are supposed to love you and protect you. Like you probably always then have your guard up a little bit, but do I trust you?
Even though you don't, obviously you don't remember it, but it's probably,
I bet your brain does.
It's probably in your subconscious trauma.
I bet there's a part of your brain that does remember something about it. Okay, next topic. Maternity leave.
Woo.
Should you take more than 6 weeks if you're in America? We're talking about just America because America does not care about pregnant women. But so because pregnant women don't get a lot of, most pregnant women don't get any paid leave.
Yeah,
unless
sad.
Well, there's the Family Medical Leave Act or the FMLA, which gives people 12 weeks of unpaid, but it only guarantees that you won't lose your job. So you have to take any PTO beyond that if you have it. But taking 12 weeks of unpaid leave is not really realistic for a lot of people out there who need to be able to pay rent and they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they need to pay for the medical bills, like with the expensive bills from giving birth. There's a lot of money. It's a luxury to be able to take 3 months off to not get paid as well, I would say.
But some of them you do get paid. You can apply.
So.
They'll siphon you based on your paycheck.
So what I've read is, in general, there's the FMLA, which gives people 12 weeks unpaid. And then there's something that some companies offer, if you're employed, called short-term disability insurance, where you get 60% of your salary for 6 weeks, which is why the original question is, after 6 weeks, do you go back to work? So if you're employed, you can get 6 weeks at 60% of your salary, and then the next 6 weeks you can have off, but it's unpaid. That is the situation for most mothers in America today. And the only exceptions are if you're in a place like Washington State, which just implemented 3 months paid for both parents, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's not common at all.
Yeah. I know, which is
so what do you think?
Unfortunate.
Do you think, should women, if they can afford it, take more than 6 weeks off? Or do you think that they should just go back to work? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it should be treated just like any other medical leave that people go on. Like, a woman just gave birth. Like, you need time to heal. You need time to bond with your baby. You just had a baby and you're caring for it. Like, you're not going to neglect it.
You need time to deal with the lack of sleep from the baby crying.
Like, it's horrible that, you don't get paid for that. Because what happens? Let's say you can't work because you get an injury at work. Mm-hmm. Well, then you get, like, LNI or whatever gets involved, and you go in disability.
Yeah.
Why do they pay for that? But when you can't physically work because you're healing, because maybe you got ripped stitches from birth, or you're dealing with postpartum depression, or, you're still breastfeeding and figuring that out and bonding with the baby, why don't you get the same treatment? I mean, you can't work yet.
Well, to be fair, again, they have short-term disability insurance if you're employed, which covers 60% of your salary for 6 weeks. But I guess the idea is, what you're saying is, that's not enough time.
Yeah. I feel like they're very stingy with their time.
What is enough time? I think what happens to a lot of mothers is they give birth and then they just like spending so much time with their child. Yeah. They just don't I don't think any amount of time is enough time.
Well, I guess you have to ask yourself, what is valued in your culture? Because you look around the world, how much maternity leave do they get?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that you say that. In Canada, you get a year of paid leave after birth.
So it just goes to show you what society values. Do they value work ethic and always working and no personal time to recharge and refresh?
Do you want to hear what Sweden gets?
Oh my gosh. Why are we in America?
Sweden gets 480 days. That's a year and a half. 90 of them, so 3 months.
Is it paid?
Yes. 90 of them are reserved for the father, and the rest are for the mom, and can be split between both parents. And it's up to the family to decide how they'll plan her leave or their leave. So,
oh my gosh, even Canada. Why are we here? We're just 2 hours away. Come on.
Yeah, we're in Seattle, so
in the wrong place.
It's like 2 hours north, and quality of life improves a decent amount especially if you're trying to have a family. Yeah, it's frustrating. I think that people out there like Bernie Sanders are trying to change that. So hopefully it'll get better in America, but I think that we have to value mothers and value children in order for there to be policies in place that take care of mothers and children. Not just, it's like the Republican argument is like, oh, we value life, so we want to prevent women from having abortion. Okay, that's one side of the coin, but the other side of the coin is if you value life so much, why aren't you making it so that there are policies in place to take care of those mothers and those children after they're born?
Yeah.
Crickets. They don't say a word because they don't think the government should have to help. Or they don't think or they don't want to force employers to help. So I don't know. I don't think they should even be allowed to play that card that they care about life, personally, unless you care about both. Anyway, I mean, so I wrote down that, the pros of being with the child, you've already pretty much mentioned them, is that you need time with the baby to bond. It's good for child development. You need time to recover from the trauma of the labor, and you need time to deal with the lack of the sleep from the baby crying. And the cons are that it's in America, it's usually unpaid. And so if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And so you get stuck in a situation. I went on a Reddit group, thinking it was a Reddit group for babies. And I was reading stories from mothers, and they were saying how upset they were that they had got into around 6 weeks. And they knew they have to go back to work and put their baby in daycare. And they were saying they were like crying about it. They're just like so upset, so mad that they have to like do this when they really don't want to. But they don't have a choice. And some of these mothers are single mothers who don't have a husband to help support as well. So it's like they really don't have a choice.
Not to mention that, but daycare's prices are ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of them are almost as much as like a semester in college. Like, what?
Are you serious?
Yes.
Well, it depends where you're going to school, I guess.
Yeah, it depends where you're going to school. I mean, I used to work at a daycare, and it was like at least $10,000
a year,
a month.
No, it was not $10,000 a month. No way.
Yes.
You mean $1,000 a month?
Well, I guess no. I think it was the upper end. It was in Esqua.
This was Bill Gates' daycare.
Maybe that was 2 kids, but still.
It must have. So it's $5,000 a month.
Still, like,
I hear people complaining about $1,000 a month.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, let's think about it.
Like they already, let's say they go on maternity leave, they already don't have money.
Yeah.
Because it's not paid, and then what? You're stuck. Like, who's going to take care of my kid?
I know.
How am I going to afford this?
Yeah. Yeah, we should probably have a program in place for children to be able to be put in daycare for free.
Yeah.
The same way K through 12 pretty much exists as a glorified daycare so that people can go to their jobs.
Yeah.
It needs to go from cradle and not just from preschool.
Yep.
But I don't think that should replace mothers being given enough time to bond with their child and to recuperate from surgery and to be able to catch up on the sleep they're missing from baby. Like, they should still be given adequate time. Now, what that time should be is up for debate. I don't know what a good amount of time is. Is it 3 months? Is it 6? Is it 9? Is it I don't know. A year sounds great. But then you got people, okay, let's play devil's advocate, but then you got women out there that kind of would game the system. They would have a child every year and just be off permanently and just have 6 kids.
It's not gaming the system because you have to care for all of those kids.
Well, there's pros and cons. I mean,
it's a lot of work.
That's true.
That's a lot for just to get it a year. Like,
yeah, I guess.
I would argue that it's maybe a little bit more work sometimes than just going to a job every day because you have after hours.
It depends on who you are and what kind of job you have.
Sure.
Maybe you love being a mom, and being a mom is better than any job you could ever have. And so in that sense, you might see it as gaming the system. And if you have a terrible job, like if you work at McDonald's or Walmart and they just treat you like crap, I don't know. And then maybe you're like, you just want to do, at all costs, you want to avoid it. Perhaps. But it just depends. Okay, so here are some interesting points that I wrote down about maternity leave. In the first months and years of life, young children discover the world through experiences with their parents and other caregivers. A young child's early relationships, especially with parents, shape the architecture of the developing brain. So it's very important to be there for your kid when their brain is developing. Paid paternal leave can reduce infant mortality by as much as 10%.
Wow.
So are they saying that if you put your child in daycare at 6 weeks, it has a higher probability that something could happen to it?
They're saying 2 people are better than 1.
Is it saying that? Or is it saying if you had to go back to work, you put your kid in daycare, it could die at daycare? It sounds like it could be either. I don't know.
I would think there's a lot of lawsuits if that happened. To me, it sounds like, let's say the mom is dealing with the baby all by herself. It's a lot.
I see. Paid parental leave increases the likelihood of infants getting well baby care, visits, and vaccinations. Paid parental leave increases the rate and duration of breastfeeding. Paid parental leave reduces the likelihood of getting infection, lower risk for asthma, obesity, sudden infant death syndrome. If it increases the rate and duration of breastfeeding, women who breastfeed are less likely to get breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Wow, so it sounds like if you have breast milk in there, but then you don't use it, it sets you up for being more likely to getting a cancer.
If you're not regularly breastfeeding.
So it sounds like there's something about breastfeeding that helps prevent that, or using your supply. Women who took longer than 12 weeks of maternity leave reported fewer depressive symptoms, a reduction in severe depression, and improvement in their overall mental health.
There we go.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be super bummed out if I had to go back to work right after I had a baby.
I mean, a lot of people deal with postpartum already because all of a sudden they had all these hormones and then all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with that. And then all of a sudden, I have to go back to work too. So I feel like jobs aren't even considering the mental health, which is why Canada is generous. And okay, let's give you a year so you can sort out all your things.
Yeah. Women who were exposed to a more generous maternity leave policy were 18% less likely to suffer from depression 30 years later when they were 50 or older. Dads who took paternity leave of 10 days or longer were more involved with their children and with childcare activities than men who took no leave. Paid paternity leave benefits women economically because they tend to go back to work and stay with the same employer, which means their wages grow at a faster rate afterwards. Anyway, the recommendation here is you should take as much as you can afford. But that's a controversial topic because a lot of people can't afford it. And that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Now, I know that's what causes a lot of women to just become stay-at-home moms, though. Is they're just like, daycare is so expensive. I don't want to go back to work after 6 weeks. I'm just going to stay at home. Because, I think if you don't even earn that much in your job to begin with, it's like doesn't make sense. It depends on how much money.
Find other ways to make income.
Well, if you have a husband to provide, maybe you just make do on one salary. And if you don't, then maybe you find a job where you can work from home. I had a sister who had the choice of, putting she had 3 kids. She could put them all in daycare. And how much is that going to cost? Yeah. Versus, I don't think her job paid that much. So it's like, it doesn't make economic sense. You might as well stay at home with the kids.
Yeah.
But some women also want to do that. Not they don't necessarily feel like they've been forced into it. Some of them also want to do it. I guess it depends on the person. So I was going to get into the next topic. It's kind of a seamless segue. It's like, should women work or should they be a stay-at-home mom? Depends on the person.
Depends on the person.
Right. I think it depends on the person, but there's also factors such as like...
There's pros and cons.
Do you have enough money to stay at home?
Yeah. If you do stay at home, you got to make sure that you have a budget set in place.
Yeah. Some women wouldn't stay at home even if daycare costs are super high because they want that satisfaction of having a career.
Sure, yeah,
And
there's that too.
They have those goals that they don't want to just be at home. They want to do something else as well. But when you're in the workplace, you have less time to raise the child the way you want to raise them.
Yep.
You're kind of
less time to spend with the kid.
Less time to spend with them, less time to see them grow up. But when the kid grows up in daycare, I mean, I wonder what the pros and cons are of that. Like, on one hand, they're being socialized. They're getting to interact with lots of other kids. But it's like the people who work there become like the new mommy.
Yeah.
And who knows what they want for your child.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
What are they like?
Well, I guess you do interviews.
Yeah, if you have a person who comes to your house versus a center.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how about this? I mean, you used to work in a daycare.
Yes.
How would you feel about putting your child in a daycare?
I would not.
You wouldn't want to do it?
No.
Why?
Well, at least where I worked, I would not.
Okay. So maybe
if it was like a very small daycare and I don't know, like family owned or something like that.
Yeah.
I think the big corporate daycares are just streamlining.
What's wrong with them?
They care more about how many kids can we get in my daycare. There's like the politics. It's like, how much money can I make? Let's shove a whole bunch of kids in one room, even though we're over capacity. That's what happened all the time where I used to work. And so it's
less about
wrong.
Less about child development and more about profit.
Yeah. A lot of the times it wasn't about what was best for the kid. It was like, oh, we only have these kids here. We need to put them in your room, regardless of how it's going to affect the other kids in the room. And you have less individual time to spend with each kid because there's so many kids.
Yeah. I mean, this is the same problem that teachers complain about with students in the classroom.
It's a shame. It really is.
We need more money for everything.
Smaller classrooms.
Yep.
So you can have more individual time with the kids. So you can invest more into them rather than just them being left behind and forgotten and not addressing what they're actually dealing with.
Apparently there's a term called mommy tract. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's where you quit your job to be a stay-at-home mom, and then you do that for so long that you've lost career building time, and so they say you're on a mommy track instead of like your career track. It's like you've been mommy tracked, I guess. I don't know. So let's go over the pros and cons again, because I feel like we're kind of all over the place. So the pros of working is you make money, you have career satisfaction, you have a social life at work. The cons are daycare costs are expensive, you have less time to raise your child the way you want, and less time to see them grow up. And then the pros of staying at home is you have more time with the baby, you save money on daycare, more time to see them grow up and be raised however you have the ability to raise them the way you want to raise them, but you earn less money. That's a con. Some people complain that it makes them more dependent on their partner if they're married. If they feel like it can trap people in a bad relationship, because then it's like you don't have any money.
Sure. And you have to do a little bit more work, because instead of you're dropping them off at daycare, I guess your work, instead of your career, your work becomes, what kind of things am I going to do during the day? What am I going to expose them to? What kind of educational thing am I going to do? Yeah. What are they going to explore today?
Are we going to the zoo?
Yeah. They have to plan all of that.
Yeah.
And then like meal times and, schedules.
It's not easy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
There's a lot in it to be a good mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also socializing. So you have to go out and seek like where are there playgrounds or like play group community type things.
Some mothers complain that staying at home can be socially isolating. And
that can happen too.
Yeah, and so like you have to really be more deliberate about finding people to hang out with. But I guess you could find children to play with your children and then be friends with the mom. That probably works out sometimes, maybe.
Plan play dates.
Now, here's another one that we haven't talked about so I have a friend that has a child, and they put their child into daycare optionally, not because they have to. And I think it's because they want the child to be well socialized instead of just grow up at home. Like, they have the choice to have them stay at home, but I think that they think it might be better for the child and to be able to grow up with a lot of social interaction.
Sure.
That's an interesting topic. I came from a large family. I'm one of 6, but I wonder, like, if I was an only child and I was
me.
Yes, but you weren't homeschooled.
No.
I was homeschooled. So if I was homeschooled and an only child, and my parents did not seek out a lot of opportunities for me to socialize, I think that could be debilitating.
Yeah. Unless they really, really involved you in social groups.
Right.
But they would have to really involve you in social groups.
That's what I'm saying.
Or like sports or like something.
If you live in America, I think the ideal situation at this point, realistically, would be to work a part-time job and still stay at home more to be there with the kid, or have a remote job where you can work from home and be there with the kid. Then you have more time with the kid, more time to raise them the way you want to raise them, but you also then don't have to give up your career.
Yeah.
Like, you found a way to kind of like do both.
Yeah.
If I was a woman, that's
great.
what I would try to do, and hope that Bernie Sanders changes everything so that there's more resources available to women and children. But until then, it seems like the way to go. I don't know. All right. New topic. Ready? Breastfeeding versus formula. What do you think about that?
I think breastfeeding, because there's more than just giving the nutrients to the baby. It's a bonding experience between you and the baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy for the baby. Like, there's a lot of nutrients in human breast milk that aren't in formula.
Yeah, I've heard breastfeeding is much healthier.
Yes.
Nutritionally.
Yes, nutritionally.
Yeah.
And also emotionally, and it bonds you to the baby. And yeah, I think those are all good positives. Obviously, like, some mothers can't produce milk.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Or as much milk that the baby needs, so then they need to do supplemental. But I think if you can, why not?
Well, I've heard that one of the reasons why women choose not to is because they want to be on some kind of medication, and they think that that'll show up in the breast milk.
Well, you can always pump and dump, right?
Some medication you have to be on
yes,
every day.
I guess some you can't.
Here's a great example, ADHD. I read a story of a woman she's like, I need to be on Adderall because my life's a mess if I'm not on it, and that means I can't breastfeed. And so I feel like judged by other women because they're like, you're a bad mom because you don't breastfeed, but they don't understand that I have to be on my meds.
Curious though, can she take Adderall while being pregnant?
No, I think she went off the meds while she was pregnant. She gave birth, and then she went on the meds again.
You would think though, if she waited all that time during pregnancy, why wouldn't you just wait for breastfeeding? Unless, I guess, she was going back to work or something.
It's probably really rough on her.
Yeah.
Coming from somebody who has it, it's like it's like you probably don't want to wait another. I mean, how long do you breastfeed for?
It varies, but some people do it up to a year.
I think it can go longer than that.
Sometimes, yeah. It's. I mean, if you keep using it, but generally.
So the World Health Organization recommends that breastfeeding should be done for 2 years.
Really?
I'm quick with these stats. I got them.
Huh.
So most women, though, in America, stop before the baby is 6 months, or they don't even start at all. Oh. But the World Health Organization says it should be done for 2 years. And nearly 2 out of 3 infants are not breastfed exclusively for the recommended 6-month minimum.
Wow.
So here's the research I did on pros and cons. So for breastfeeding or pumping, right, which is the act of, you breastfeed.
Saving it for later.
You breastfeed into a container and then bottle feed it. breastfeeding or pumping is healthier. It says that breast milk is the ideal food for infants. It's safe, clean, and contains antibodies which help protect against many common childhood illnesses. Breast milk provides all of the energy and nutrients that the infant needs for the first month of life, and it continues to provide up to half or more of a child's nutritional needs during the second half of the first year and up to 1/3 during the second year of life. Breastfed children are less likely to be overweight or obese and less prone to diabetes later in life. Women who breastfeed also have a reduced risk of breast and ovarian cancers, like we were talking about earlier, and less likely for children to develop allergies and asthma. Children that are breastfed have a more developed brain. Ooh, see, this is really controversial. Because women who don't do this,
with studies,
because women who don't do this, then they have to deal with this guilt that they're not doing this for their kid. Children that are breastfed have a more developed brain. Infants who were exclusively breastfed for at least 3 months had enhanced development in key parts of the brain compared to children who were fed formula or a combination of formula and breast milk. Breastfeeding does not enhance development. It is the biological norm, but formula feeding inhibits neurological development. There's also the benefits for breastfeeding of skin-to-skin contact with the child, enhances the bonding with the mother and the baby. It also helps your body to naturally return to its pre-pregnancy state. So I guess if you want to lose weight, the baby weight faster, breastfeeding helps with that. And it also, breastfeeding also prevents postpartum depression for the mother. Breastfeeding has been associated with getting more sleep at night, possibly because it is faster than preparing a bottle in the middle of the night, and having lower levels of stress hormones during anxiety-provoking situations, both of which could improve mood and reduce the risk of depressive symptoms. That's interesting.
Nice.
But what are the cons of breastfeeding?
It can hurt.
It can hurt. They bite your nipple.
Yeah.
Ooh. What would you do if your baby bit your nipple? Would you scream at it? You'd probably have to fight. I'd
probably be like, ow.
Yeah. I wonder if, as a mother, you probably feel bad screaming at your kid, but you also feel like they deserved it.
Well, you're not screaming at them. You're like screaming at the pain. Because they can't.
Bull. You're screaming at them. They just bit you.
They're trying to get milk, though. It's like you're trying to scrape to get food.
Yeah.
You know?
Well.
Then maybe they haven't even learned yet, you know? So I guess maybe the initial adjustment to getting used to it can be a little bit painful.
It can also be time consuming.
Yep. You have to go and wait and feed.
I guess you can pump
every 2 hours.
Yeah, maybe at night when you're watching a TV show, you could pump. So you have some bottles on reserve, right? And then you just fill in the gaps with that here and there. But you definitely have to be very methodical and thoughtful about it.
Well, and then also it's like some babies only prefer warm, so you'd have to heat it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
they're
versus cold.
They're like connoisseurs of baby milk.
I mean, some of them are, they're like picky. They won't take it cold. They'll take it warm because they're used to it warm from the mother, probably.
Here's another one. It can be awkward to do it in public if you don't have it in a bottle already. Like if you have to breastfeed, then you have to throw like a cloth over.
Well, yeah, you have to have your cloth.
And then you have people out there that will tell you to leave a restaurant or judge you for it. Yeah. It's and I don't agree with that at all. No. I think you should be able to breastfeed wherever you want. That's what boobs are for. They're for feeding your children. That's stupid.
There's multiple uses for
yes, I mean,
everything.
Breasts can be viewed in a sexual way, but they're original.
Just like there's multiple uses for the penis, too.
What else do you do with it?
You pee.
Besides that, okay, whatever. I guess you can poke things. You can press the elevator button with it.
Okay. You know what I mean.
What I was saying is I think if we were playing Family Feud and you said top 5 reasons for a breast to exist, number one should be feeding children, right?
Yeah.
It's
biologically.
Yes, it's over sexuality. I would argue. Anyway, because of that, I think you should be able to breastfeed wherever you want. And that's kind of the argument behind the free the nipple movement is like, these are for feeding children. How dare you tell me that it's illegal for me to whip them out in public? You know, well, it's not illegal to breastfeed in public.
No.
Well, if you don't put a shawl over your breast, though, would you get in trouble?
I think in certain places, yeah.
See, I think that's wrong, though.
Yeah.
What do you think that's wrong?
I mean,
that's what it's for.
I agree, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like there, it's not that much effort to put a shawl thing on.
That's true.
But let's say you don't have a shawl, like
you could throw napkin.
Yeah, like you could find something.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's just more so like certain establishments are like, we don't want to be seen with all these mothers and their boobs and
whatever.
I mean, it's a human thing.
So, as far as formula goes, the pros of that is it might work better for some women's lifestyle, like if they don't have the time or because they're not able to, like you said earlier, if they have a medical condition or if they need to be on medication or if they want to drink alcohol, which is like a lifestyle thing. But
you can pump and dump though.
That's true.
It's probably easier to make. Easier, less time consuming.
Yeah. But, cons definitely not as healthy. Ultimately, what I read online, people were saying it's ultimately most important that the child is getting enough to eat.
Yeah.
Like enough nutrition, period. But if you can breastfeed or pump and dump, that's the best thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next topic. This is something that we explored in length for several hours and talked about. But I think it'll be interesting to talk about it again. So, what do you think about gender neutral parenting?
Oh my gosh.
This is such a can of worms. We watched literally, I think, every video on YouTube that exists around this topic.
Yeah.
I think I've watched 10 hours of footage from all different angles, it's so many different things. But what did we land on? What did you?
I mean, yes, to a certain extent, you are shaping a kid's life with what you influence the kid with.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I think kids are just being kids. Like, they don't really decide who they are until later. And so you present them with all these, like, saying they're not one or the other and they have to choose for themselves. It kind of confuses them, I think.
You're saying by taking away all the choice and putting it all in their hands 100%, it can be more confusing for them later?
Confusing for them at the present time.
Because they have nothing to identify themselves with?
Yeah, then they feel a loss of identity because it's like, okay, so then this is up to me. Mm-hmm. And all these parents, my other friends are asking me questions about this. And that can be stressful. Yeah.
What do you mean? The parents are asking, like, are you, what are
to
you?
Well,
they don't ask that.
The parents will ask that to the other parents will ask questions to the parents, right?
Uh-huh.
And then let's say you're playing on the playground. Other kids are going to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Other kids are going to make comments.
Yeah.
That's a harder experience in school. Like,
you're
it's going to make a harder life for that kid.
You're constantly
pushing against the norm.
You're constantly seen as someone that confuses people.
Yes. And so there's questions.
There's always a thing. It's always a thing.
Yes. So why deal with that?
Why put your child
so early
in that situation?
When they're still developing, when they still can't comprehend certain things cognitively. Like, why not have them, when they are ready, deal with that issue? You don't need to force them to choose right now. Like, I think that puts an extreme amount of pressure on them. And then also pressure with their friends and their peers.
Mm-hmm.
Of not feeling accepted. Like they shouldn't have to deal with that until they are more developed, can comprehend complex issues like this of what they're really deciding or what they're really saying. Like, let's say maybe they're kids. Maybe they're just they don't fully understand what they are saying. They're just like, oh, yeah, I'm a boy.
So let's take a step back a second and define for our audience these terms in case they're not aware. So like your sex is your genitalia, right? And then your gender is whether you're masculine or feminine, whether you identify with that.
As a male or female.
This is kind of like the circumcision argument. Is like you don't get to decide though for your child whether or not they associate it with masculine or feminine. You don't get to decide whether or not they are circumcised. You don't get to decide things that they should get to decide. It's kind of aligns with the same mentality of, these are decisions that we should allow them to have a sense of autonomy. But at the same time, as a parent, you want what's best for them and you don't want to set them up for a rough life. Like giving them an alien name would give them a rough life.
Yep.
Or, putting a swastika on their forehead would give them a rough life. But I'm just saying, like, there are things that you could do to your child or ways you could treat them that can give them a harder life. And so you want what's best for your child. You don't want to make their life hard.
Yes.
So how do you do that? How do you balance that with still leaving it up to them to like whatever they want and do whatever they want that's good for them?
I mean, obviously, let's say you have a girl and you get all these Barbies, all this girl stuff.
Yep.
And let's say she wants to play with the truck.
That's fine.
And you get mad at that. Like, I think that is wrong.
I would never get mad at that.
Yeah. I think that is wrong. I think that's putting pressure on the child.
But we have a double standard in society because if women want to be into boy things, hardly nobody cares. But when a boy wants to be into girl things, people freak out.
Well, vice versa. I think if a boy wanted to play with a Barbie, who cares?
What about wants to start putting makeup on?
Whatever. He's a kid. He's exploring all these things. Like, everything he is playing with is new.
I'm not saying... I guess a lot of parents maybe see it as like the more you allow a child to do something, the more they're going down that path. And as a parent, you have the ability to shape the path they go down. And so it's like some parents want their boy to act in a masculine way. Some parents, they want their girl to act in a feminine way. And if they see them diverging from those paths, then they want to intervene.
But that's not always the path that they continue to take. And like I've worked at a daycare. I've seen many boys and many girls playing with each other's toys. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they're going to turn out to be. They're still learning and exploring.
Yeah. So one, it could be a phase. But two, even if it's not a phase, it's still their choice, though.
Yeah.
So I think you just try to love them and parent them without trying to turn them into what you want them to be.
Yeah.
I think that's the right thing to do, but I don't think many parents follow that. I think it's hard. I think it's hard it's easier said than done. Like when it's happening to your child, it's like this very tempting to want to intervene. I mean,
sure.
I mean, this gets into another topic that I was going to want to talk to you about later, which is religion too. It's like, it's very tempting to want them, make them believe what you believe, think the way you think, act the way you want them to act. Like, it's very tempting, but it's like you're trying to like find that line between I'm parenting so that I'm raising you up so that you can be the best adult you can be when I'm dead, when I'm not there to help you anymore, and try to do more of that and less of I'm trying to turn you into what I want you to be for selfish reasons. Yeah. For self-centered reasons. But anyway, the pros and cons that I wrote down. The pros of gender-neutral parenting. And so I think we should also define it. Like, gender-neutral parenting, it just means that you don't have an agenda around gender. Like, you're not painting the nursery blue or pink. You're not putting blue or pink things on them. You're not putting...
Well, if they choose blue or pink... It's basically you are not assigning them anything from that. It's like a free-for-all. Mm-hmm. It's like having your kid
pick it out themselves.
Pick whatever. But I don't know, because it can get extreme.
Yeah.
Because then some parents are like, well, you don't even call them he or she. You call them they bees.
They, them.
Yeah. So I think that's where I have a problem, where it gets really confusing. And
it's going to make it harder for them growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Socially.
So here's what I wrote down. I wrote that the pros of gender-neutral parenting is that it does teach your children to combat sexual or sex stereotypes. And that's good. It teaches things to boys, like they're allowed to cry. They're allowed to have emotions, even though maybe like stereotypically, if you're taught to be masculine, you're not supposed to cry. That's like a typical example.
I think that's wrong.
Where like fathers will like hit their children. They'll hit their boy and say like, "Don't cry."
Yeah.
You know, I think that's wrong. So I think there's a balance here. Like there's some things I think you could do better. A pro of gender neutral parenting is it is more likely to encourage women to get more involved in STEM careers, which is the future. You know, or like girls playing more sports. Teaching your children that being a boy or a girl doesn't stop them from doing anything or mean they have to be a certain way. I think that is also healthy. Like, I think it is good though. Like, just because you're a boy doesn't mean you have to be a soldier. Just because you're a girl doesn't mean you have to go on The Bachelor and wait for a guy to marry you to save your life. Like, so, you know, I think those things are fine. But the cons of gender neutral parenting is that it's going to make it harder for you to fit in. And as a parent, you want your child to fit in the sense that you want them to be accepted by their peers. But doesn't that also kind of go against wanting a non-traditional name too? Like, don't you? It's like do you want them to fit in or do you want them to be special?
Again, I think you find something in between, not so extreme where they're having to understand what they is them and what they're biologically and what are they as a gender, versus like the extreme of I only wear pink because I'm a girl. You know, you expose your kids to both types of toys and let them play what they want to play with, so they're not forced in a box. But at the same time, like, they know who they are biologically. And maybe down the road, if they want to explore other things later, that's their choice, but they don't have to make that decision right now.
They'll have a hard time fitting in. That's what we were talking about, right? I wrote down, the world is based upon gender constructs. So even if like you have them, you have to keep your kid locked in a room their whole life to prevent them from being exposed to it. So they're gonna be
society. They're
gonna be exposed to it eventually.
Yeah.
So you might as well. I think it's unhealthy to put your kid in a bubble and pretend like the reality doesn't exist. Like it'd be better to set them up for what they're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah.
Not using gendered pronouns or eliminating any gender differences will make them so they have to learn them later in life when they go to school, and they'll end up becoming a social outcast. That's a point that someone made. Raising kids without an identity actually can cause problems when they get older and try to interact with society. Yep. Another point that I wrote down is statistically around 1 in 1,000 people are trans, and 80% of kids with gender dysmorphia grow out of it by puberty. So if a boy wants to dress like a girl or thinks he's a girl, it is most likely a phase, because you'd have to be 1 in 1,000. But even if it's not a phase, the argument is that when the child grows up, they're their own person and they have a right to be whatever they want to be. Yeah. So it's their choice then.
Let them choose then.
But you can't deny that in their most formative years, you as a parent have the ability to influence who they become a little bit.
I mean, it's unavoidable. So as a parent, you are influencing because you're there.
Yeah. So I think it's just about trying to find that balance between being a good parent, but not trying to guide them down towards a certain thing. Like the father that really, really, really wants his boy to become like a professional football player, and he just like shoves it down his throat like every single day.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know if that's right.
I think if the boy wants to play football, that's fine. But yeah, shoving it down their throat, I think that's where the line is drawn.
But where does the want come from? Does it come intrinsically, or does it come because he's been brainwashed?
It could be both.
That's hard I wrestle with that. I don't know. It's like, is the parent? That's the whole point.
I mean, are you not supposed to expose them to anything?
I don't know.
You need to expose them to something.
You got to expose them to things that I think are good for them, but then try to like not like force them to be a certain way.
Exactly.
And like, I think you provide them with options and you just love them.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think you teach them that these are stereotypes in society and you can choose to identify with them if you want, if it feels right to you.
I mean, but that doesn't mean you can't share some of your favorite things with them.
That's true. And you can explain maybe why you like them.
Yeah.
Let's see. Another point in here that I wrote down is that I think that it's worth noting that if a boy likes stereotypical boy things or a girl likes stereotypical girl things, that should be allowed too. So
yes.
there are some parents out there that just want a special kid. They're like progressive, super progressive, new agey parents, and they just want to have a child that makes them feel special. So they like are trying to make their kid an out of the box kid. And so like maybe they're like trying to dress their boy, or maybe they're trying to do the gender neutral thing and they're just trying so hard to make their kid different. But then their kid starts identifying with things that are gender normative. Mm-hmm. Like the boy starts playing with G.I. Joes, or the girl starts wearing makeup and putting on dresses, and the parents freak out about that. Yeah. See, I think that's wrong too. Yep. Right? Like,
because then I think the parents are worried, oh, did they get this from society, or we're not having enough gender neutral things.
Conversations.
But maybe they just like that, okay? Mm-hmm. It's like, kids aren't thinking this complexly. Mm-hmm. They're kids.
Yeah, those types of parents, I read that they're using their kid as a political statement. They just want a special kid. They're doing it for themselves, and they're using their child to score progressive points. Like, oh, we're so progressive that our child doesn't identify with anything gender normative. But I think at a certain age, like maybe not 1 or 2, but like by age 4 or 5, like if your kid is liking things that are gender normative, like a boy wanting to, I don't know, what are gender normative things? So if a boy wants to wear blue or a girl wants to wear pink,
then that's another thing. What color do you paint the room?
White. I don't know. I mean, a gender neutral concept, a gender neutral theme is what? Like, what? I love outer space. I think outer space is cool. But how does outer space align to any gender? That's insane. Like,
yeah, it doesn't.
Stars and stars and spaceships, and they say that's a boy thing. Yeah. I totally 100% think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Girls can like outer space. It's just a place.
I know.
It's like
they think science, and they think men are more into science,
and that needs to change.
Needs to change too. Yeah,
that's part of like I
totally agree.
You want women to feel like they're welcome to pursue STEM careers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Next topic. Should you teach your children your religion if you have one?
I think you should share what you believe
versus a truth.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it's certain core things that you value, it's like morals and values that you have, you should definitely share those things and try to instill a good nature in your kid.
Number one example I can think of, though, is someone's a Christian, they have a child, they teach their child, God exists and Jesus is God. Jesus is who you should worship, and base everything around that as truth, as fact. And you're 2 years old. Mm-hmm. That's the number one example I can think of.
I don't think they can fully grasp that concept yet.
But they're injecting that message into that fresh hard drive brain that has no data on it. Sure. They're injecting it in there as much as they can from different angles, so that by the time that kid is older, they think about that blindly. Like,
well, isn't
Jesus is God, God exists, and I worship Jesus, I'm a Christian.
Like, obviously, you shouldn't force anything upon your child. I don't think you should force anything upon your child.
But you still don't want to do what's best for your child at the same time.
Yeah, and you want to do what's best. So
how do you wrestle with that?
You don't. You present them with things, but you don't force them. Just like the same thing with the gender.
But how many Christians out there do you think teach their children about all the religions? I think very few. Very few. I grew up Christian, and my parents didn't talk to me about any religion. I know that's just one anecdote, but I mean,
not even Christianity.
Of course, that one. I mean,
you said any religion.
Any other religion other than Christianity.
Religion.
Yes, yeah.
I'm like, what?
No, no. But I mean, I think it's very atypical. It's very abnormal for religious parents to educate their children anywhere close to equal about other religions than the one that they believe.
Because they're so invested in what they believe.
And I think it's also uncommon for religious people to teach their children about their religion as information, as a belief, versus as the truth, a fact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's what we believe over here, and then there's like objectivity. There's this is what it is. And I think that's how they approach it. Most people approach it that way, is this is what it is. And I think, personally, that's child abuse, because they don't know any better. And they love you 100%, and they trust you 100%, and you're telling them something like, this is how it is, and you accept it 100%. When you don't know for sure that this is what it is. You believe it. And I think it's child abuse to go to talk to them about it as a fact versus a belief, personally.
I think a lot of people in their hearts, that's what they believe. So that's
they
why
believe it's a fact.
That's why they relay it over. Yeah.
But again, you use the word belief. They believe it's a fact.
Yeah.
But they don't state it like that. They say this is what it is.
Because that's what they believe.
But I think as long as you use the word believe,
yeah,
and you explain what a belief is, and that you explain that there is multiple beliefs out there, I think if you provide a lot of context around that, it feels less like child abuse. But
yeah, I don't think you should keep your kid in a bubble. Like yes, maybe what you grew up with, it like there was positives and negatives to being surrounded in maybe a certain religion. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't think that you should make your kid only be exposed to that. Yeah. Like, I know you want your kid to be safe and in a safe environment. So I think that's another reason why a lot of people gravitate towards certain like religion or establishment, because they want them to be in a good environment and not a lot of bad things going on. Yeah. But I also think when you grow up and get out of that and are in the real world where you do need to face a different environment than you were in, it's a lot harder to navigate. And so I think it's important to not just expose your kids to just that, but to set them up for success by being exposed to, you know, like kids who go to private school versus public school. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, it's hard because you want what's best for your kid, and you don't want them to get into a bad place and go down a bad path. So it's like, it's hard. Because you want to give them that experience, but you don't want them to derail them. You know what I mean?
You don't want to force it on them, but you want them to want to have a good experience in their life.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It's like you're trying to find the balance.
Yeah.
But if your child was atheist, I mean, you'd still love them.
Yeah, you love them regardless of whatever. But honestly,
believes in something different than you, you'd still love them.
Honestly, when you're a kid, though, your brain is still developing.
So then why try to put it in there then anyway?
I think the same reason why you share what you enjoy or your values, your morals with your kid is because it's something that that resonates with you.
But you can teach morality though without injecting dogma of like.
Sure. But what I'm saying is like, that's why you share it with them. It's not because you're trying to force them. That's why it's being brought up.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, like, it isn't really until later in life that they have to make those decisions. Same with like gender, that kind of thing. So even if you do expose them early on, their brain is not gonna fully grasp the concept till later.
I guess, but you're in your most formative years, and I think that information sticks the best when you're younger. So I do think that there are reasons why people try to get at their kids early with brainwashing them, indoctrinating them. There's a reason for it. Anyway, I wrote down the pros and cons for this topic. And so as a disclaimer, this is like if you have a religion as a parent, this is not talking about if you're atheist, but if you have a religion as a parent, the pros of teaching that religion to your child is if it's surrounded around morals, then you can use it to make them better behaved. But I would argue that you could do that without religion, that morals can exist independently. Personally, like you can teach people to, treat others with respect and do the right thing, and teach the golden rule doesn't exist in Christianity. It exists permanently, like outside of it. Teachers have also reported that kids who attend religious services have stronger self-control and react better to discipline. So that's saying that if you're put in church, you're more likely to have better self-control and you handle discipline better. I think that just says more. I think that just speaks more to if you're put in an institution, you get used to institution.
Well, you're taught that.
It's like I was homeschooled, and so I think I'm more rebellious, and I do worse with authority figures because I didn't have to deal with them growing up.
That's true.
As much.
Yeah.
But if I was forced to go sit in a school, K through 12, I think I'd be more used to it.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you, though. I don't know. This means you've become acceptant. You become accepting of it.
It might make it easier in society because you do have to deal with authority.
That's true.
Figures.
One reason why children in religious families might be better behaved is because they think that there is more at stake, that God is watching. Kind of like how parents use Santa as watching in order to get presents.
Yep.
It's like if you think this thing is always watching you, you're like doing the right thing because you're trying to get in with the big man upstairs. But I think you should be teaching your kids to do the right thing because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
If you can build that in intrinsically so that they do the right thing for the right reasons and not because of treasures in heaven or because they're going to go to hell and burn in the fire.
Yeah. I don't think it should be fear based
or reward based. I think it should be instilling something inside of them to want to do the right things because you want to help people.
Yeah.
Or you want to be nice to people because you want people. It's the golden rule because you want people to help you and you want people to be nice to you. I think it's about that, right? Like, not about what you'll get when you die or what punishment you'll get if you're bad and you die. Like, I think it should be about like treating each other the way you'd want to be treated. Mm-hmm. You can get so far with just that. But just that, like, why do you even need religion? You don't even need religion for that. You can get really far with that.
Which is the basis. It's loving others.
Another reason why children in religious families might be better behaved is that they're the only ones that can get into religious communities. It says their parents might feel they'll fit in because they're compliant and able to sit still. So self-control, in other words, might lead to church service and not vice versa. So they're saying if you're better behaved, you're more likely to go to church and sit in the service and stay there, week after week after week. And if
versus having to deal with that kid if they're misbehaving.
Perfect example. I'm one of 6, and my five siblings went to church all the time, and I'm the one who struggled with it the most. And I have a lack of self-control. I had ADHD. I didn't want to pay attention. I didn't like it, So I think my behavioral issues led to me not wanting to be there at church. It's part of it as a kid. And so I think that's interesting. It's like, if you're better behaved anyway already, or if you have more self-control already, you're more able to be compliant and sit still in church, which can make you more religious by going, Some researchers link religious affiliation and regular church attendance with a mild boost in children's mental health, but this applies to people who prayed or meditated on their own time. And so it says that without religion, meditating, they reap a similar benefit, which included lower risk of substance abuse and depression. So I think that speaks more to maybe the more time you take to reflect about the thoughts that are going on in your mind, the more likely you are to be in tune with your mental health.
Yeah, it's a very therapeutic, healthy thing, because whether you're meditating or praying, you're reflecting over your life. Mm-hmm. You're wishing good on other people. I mean, if you're praying, it's praying to this being other than yourself. So there's a connection piece. Or if you're meditating, I guess that's the lack of anything in your mind, but you feel this connectiveness if a thought arises. So it's by reflecting on that, it's really good for your mental health, because you're rehearsing it in your mind, or you're quieting your mind from all the busyness of everyday life. You're taking a break. And a lot of people don't spend the time to do that. I think by doing that, it's rejuvenating for the body and for the mind and for the soul.
Well, you're also having eureka moments.
Yeah.
Like your brain makes connections when you're praying or meditating that you don't normally make unless you give it that time to process things.
Yeah.
So I think that can affect your mood.
Oh, yeah.
In a positive way.
Yeah. I find I'm much happier, much lighter.
Mm-hmm.
I feel better after praying.
Another point that I researched, there are the positive benefits associated with personal religiousness have been well documented, and they may include less drug, alcohol, and tobacco use, lower rates of depression and suicide, better sleep quality, and greater hopefulness and life satisfaction. I think part of that is probably if you believe that your life has meaning, that there is more to life than this, and you have something to look forward to, then that affects your outlook on life, your mood. It says religion also has a long history of fostering community and cooperation. Religion provided an incentive for people to treat each other well and act morally, lest they be judged by a higher power and punished accordingly. A lot of people find their friends through church.
There's a community. You feel connected. As humans, I think that's very important that we have people who have our backs, people who we feel connected to, a part of.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you meaning too.
But couldn't you argue that you can find community outside of church, outside of religion?
Yeah, there's several different communities.
It's harder.
It's harder.
Church makes it easier.
Makes it easy. They set it all up for you.
Yeah. Religious institutions also offer formal support systems for family, especially those in need, and the activities organized by these institutions offer families a chance to bond and spend time together and be part of the same community. Mothers who attend religious services regularly with or without their kids are reported to have more positive relationships with their children over time. So these are the pros that I researched of, if you already have a religion, what the pros of sharing it with your child would be. I guess as long as you're sharing it in a way where it's your belief and not as a fact, I think potentially that could be okay, as long as you're not forcing it on them.
Yeah.
But the cons of doing this, the cons of sharing your belief with your child and exposing them to it, I looked up that this is an interesting one. It says that children from religious households are less generous than kids from a secular background. Does that surprise you to hear that?
I would want to know why.
It says, one factor is a psychological phenomenon known as moral licensing, where a person will justify doing something bad or immoral, like, for example, being racist, because they've already done something good, such as praying. It's an unconscious bias. They don't even see that that's not compatible with what they've been learning in church. My understanding of this, though, is if you're a Christian and you pray and God forgave you for what you did wrong, then it's like you feel like you can do something bad subconsciously because you know you can just pray to have it forgiven and then everything's good. Where maybe if you're raised without that religious belief, you just have a secular background where you're taught to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do and it's what you'd want other people to do for you, then maybe you're less likely to go around doing something bad with the notion that subconsciously I can just ask for forgiveness for this later.
You don't know if you're forgiven.
Well, this gets at the root of like, why do we do what we do? Do you raise your child to do the right thing because God is watching and you want to get into heaven, and if you do the wrong thing, you're going to hell? Or do you want to raise your child to do the right thing because it's the way that you would want to be treated?
Yeah.
That's what this gets at. If you raise your child to do the right thing because you want them to be treated in that same right way, then they're going to go around doing the right thing and know that there isn't some kind of loophole where they can just ask for forgiveness by praying and then they're good.
But I would argue that not every religious person spins it that way.
There's some that I think there's a whole bunch of different types of religious people out there. There's people that raise their children to where they say, God is watching, do the right thing, you get in heaven, do the wrong thing, you go to hell. Then there's religious people out there. This is just for Christianity. Then there's religious Christians out there that'll say like all of that, plus they'll also teach them the golden rule. And it's like a hybrid, right? But I have not personally come across many Christians in my life that have only taught them the golden rule and ignored all of that. Like, do good stuff, you get treasures in heaven. Do bad stuff, you go to hell. Like, that's always been integral with Christian ideology and what I know about it. But perhaps there are Christians out there that don't go down that path, but you know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah. And vice versa. There are probably parents out there who aren't religious who teach that, yeah, you do this because it's good, but if they don't do the good thing, they're going to get punished. There's parents probably that do that too. So there's a wide spectrum.
Another point is it can be harmful when children grow up and don't believe what parents believe if parents keep pushing their beliefs on them and punish them for not conforming.
Yes.
I think in a child's formative years, we should be careful what we program into their minds as truth when we don't know something to be true, and we should teach them the difference between a belief and what we know to be true. We should teach them about religion as a concept and that many religions exist, not just your own if you have one, and expose them to many. Teaching kids right and wrong, you can do this devoid of a particular religious flavor. I think it's good to teach kids critical thinking skills, give them room to figure things out for themselves. I think you should teach children to do good because it's the right thing to do, not because God is watching you or you'll be punished and sent to hell. These are things I already talked to you about. And if a child grows up and wants to explore a certain religion, you should support their autonomy to explore and decide for themselves. I guess the only exception to that is if they joined some kind of religion where it was involving like drinking the Kool-Aid and killing themselves. I don't know.
Well, if it involves their safety, of course.
But see, if you're Christian and you believe everyone's going to hell if you're not saved, then it does involve their safety. And then you're going around life thinking your child's going to burn in hell forever, right? Like, so it does on a mental level. That's what ends up happening, right?
But ultimately, in the end game, it's still their decision.
I know it is, but then like parents are like, "Oh, I failed as a parent because you don't believe what I believe. Oh, I failed as a parent because you're not."
I mean, but someone could overly do it and then drive their kid away.
I know.
So, I mean, who's to say it's only fully responsible on the parent? Sure, the parent can influence the child, but like ultimately, it is the child's decision.
Yeah, I think the truth is, good parents realize that they will be most influential by telling the child it's their decision and just loving them and showing them all the choices.
Yeah.
I think they have more of an influence by doing that than trying to shove it down their throat.
Oh, of course.
But I think the bad parents, they fall for it. They like get sucked into like wanting to like brainwash their kid and like trying to make them exactly how they want them to be. And they would actually have more influence on that kid's life by just like, being as loving of a parent as possible and as understanding of a parent as possible, and providing them with as much information as possible and teaching them how to critically think themselves so that they can decide how they want to, approach a belief, even if they want to have one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you ready? This is the final controversial topic that I have.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. Parenting style. What do you think is a good parenting style to have for your child?
That's a very broad thing.
Have you heard of free range parenting? Have you heard?
It just makes me think of free range chickens where you just let them go and do whatever they want.
That's it. that's like, no
guidance.
Yeah, so there's
I don't think.
But then there's like right. Helicopter parents.
That's too tight.
Yeah, so there's like different.
There's somewhere in the middle.
So you're just more of a moderate.
Yeah, I'm a moderate with a lot of things.
Yeah, you're just like, not too extreme on either way.
Yeah, because then you get a little bit of both, best of both worlds,
So there are 4 types of parenting styles according to my research. One is permissive. One is authoritarian.
No.
One is authoritative. And one is uninvolved. So I was going to go over the 4 and then we can talk about them. So permissive means don't enforce the rules. Kids will be kids, right? I've never heard kids will be kids. I've heard boys will be boys, but you don't hear that a lot about women. But
so now they're making it more
gender neutral. Yeah, there you go.
Full circle.
But a permissive parenting style is more uninvolved, where you provide little guidance and you are also provide little nurturing or attention, apparently. Permissive parents are lenient. They only step in when there is a serious problem. They're quite forgiving, and they adopt an attitude of kids will be kids. When they do use consequences, they may not make those consequences stick. They might give privileges back if a child begs, or they may allow a child to get out of timeout early if he promises or she promises to be good. Permissive parents usually take on more of a friend role than a parent role. They often encourage their children to talk with them about their problems, but they usually don't put too much effort into discouraging poor choices or bad behavior. So what do you think about the permissive parent?
It sounds like it's a step above free range. Like it's pretty much free range, but if it is necessary and dire, they will step in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit more guidance, but sounds still pretty much free range.
How much you want to bet free range parents, if you drew a Venn diagram, free range parents is on one side, and on the other side of that Venn diagram, you have home birth, and in the middle there's like, you know.
And then do they order free range eggs?
But I'm saying, I bet there's a correlation between parents who have home birth and parents that want to raise their kids free range.
Because their values cross multiple avenues, like with their food, with their kids, with how they give birth.
They want to be natural.
Yeah, it's like it's just another reflection of their values in another area.
I mean, I think that it's good to let kids figure things out for themselves when it's safe and when it's not better for you to show them. But it just comes down to like wanting your kid to have autonomy, but not wanting them to get hurt or do something that could get them into trouble.
Sure.
I guess.
I think it's a little too hands off for me.
Yeah. Like you want to provide more guidance.
Yes. I want to be there and be involved and give them more structure, because I think, again, another negative of, sure, they have all this freedom, but another negative of freedom is you don't have structure, and without structure, it's a lot harder to find stability.
But too much structure can be bad.
Yeah. So again, I'm moderate in between.
Okay. Well, the second parenting style is uninvolved. Uninvolved parents tend to have little knowledge of what their children are doing. There tends to be few rules. Children may not receive much guidance, nurturing, or parental attention. Uninvolved parents expect children to raise themselves. They don't devote much time or energy into meeting children's basic needs. Uninvolved parents may be neglectful, but it's not always intentional. A parent with mental health issues or substance abuse problems, for example, may not be able to care for a child's physical or emotional needs on a consistent basis. That sounds like even more
like neglect.
Yeah. Authoritarian parenting style is focused on obedience, punishment over discipline. Authoritarian parents are famous for saying, "Because I said so," when asked a question.
No.
When a child questions the reason behind a rule, they are not interested in negotiating, and their focus is on obedience. They also don't allow kids to get involved in problem-solving challenges or obstacles. Instead, they make the rules and enforce the consequences with little regard for a child's opinion. Authoritarian parents may use punishments instead of discipline. So rather than teach a child how to make better choices, they're invested in making kids feel sorry for their mistakes. Why do you think it's bad to have an authoritarian parenting style?
Because you aren't giving your kids the means to critically think. They just are told this is why you do it. They don't give a reasoning behind it.
When you die, then what? I think that's the best way to explain it. Like when you die as a parent, you're not going to be there for them anymore, and they need to be able to know why.
Yeah, they need to know the reasoning behind why you're thinking, why you're doing this. Otherwise, it just seems like, oh, I'm going to just listen to what you say, but I'm clueless as to why this is even happening. So there's not a lot of thinking going on. In fact, it probably leads to more kids just being frustrated because they don't understand.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you want your kid to understand thought processes that you're doing so that they understand that it's for their own good?
Yeah. So we just talked about authoritarian parenting style, but now we're going to talk about something that sounds similar, but it's different, called authoritative. And so authoritative parenting is where parents have rules and they use consequences, but they also take their children's opinions into account. They validate their children's feelings while making it clear that the adults are ultimately in charge. Authoritative parents invest time and energy into preventing behavior problems before they start. They also use positive discipline strategies to reinforce good behavior, like praise and reward systems. What do you think about that?
I think that is the best option.
Yeah. Authoritative?
Authoritative.
Why do you think that?
Because it's a little bit of both. It's
moderate. It's balanced.
Yeah, exactly. You're still the parent figure. You're still in charge, but at the same time, you're listening to your kids and you're hearing them out, which I think is very important because even though they are your kids, you're not going to listen to them. So later in life, they're going to feel like they aren't heard. They're going to feel like they aren't accepted. That's, stressful and hurtful to them versus, no, I'm listening to you. I'm respecting you as a person. But in the end, I'm still in charge. But I still want to hear what you have to say. I still care about your feelings and your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important.
Well, it's interesting to note that out of all the parenting styles, that the authoritative parenting style is seen to be the one that shows the best outcomes for children.
Yeah.
Some of the many benefits of this approach for kids includes they become more responsible, they're able to regulate themselves better, and learn to make good decisions on their own. They have respect for adults, other people, and rules. They're not anxious or worried about who's in charge because they know who is making decisions to make sure they are healthy and happy, the parents. They are more empathetic, kind, and warm. They tend to have fewer social problems with peers, get along with teachers, and be more popular at school. They tend to have secure attachment and better relationships with their parents, and they may be more resistant to peer pressure. All of those things sound pretty good.
Yeah.
Why do children get those benefits, though, from an authoritative parenting style? I guess it's like the more you interact with them in a the more you interact with your child in a way where you treat them like a person.
Yes.
And it's like the more they understand how to treat other people like a person.
Yes. And then that crosses over. Then they can do that in society. Mm-hmm. Then they're going to mirror what they see at home. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, let's say they get in an argument. They're not going to just storm off because this is the way it is. No, they're going to sit and listen to their friends. They're going to sit and listen to their teachers and hear them out when they want something said because that was done to them. Yeah. A lot of kids mirror what their parents are showing them and demonstrating to them. So that I think that's really important that if you want your kid to turn out that way, you should treat them that same way.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Or good stuff in, good stuff out.
Okay. So, Nicole, thanks for being on the show again. I appreciate you for taking the time to talk to me about controversial baby topics. It was fun to discuss it. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say before we go?
Now we can apply it to our child.
Yeah. So, August 2020, we're going to...
Yeah, August 13th.
Well, you don't know for sure.
Well, estimated date.
Yeah. But, yeah, we'll get a chance to apply some of these lessons learned and see how it goes, I guess. All right, that's all for now. Tune in next time for another episode of the Jon Top of It show.
Jon Top of It.
All right. Later.